Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Good morning, everybody. In today's lecture that we are going to speak on is the module 2. I am Jay Kumar. I am a faculty in environmental science at Geetham University, Bangalore campus. At the outset, I thank Dr. B.S. Balaji of JNU and Swayam Prabha for permitting me to deliver this lecture. In today's discussion, we are going to discuss upon the following contents. One is ecosystem. What is an ecosystem? How is it defined and how is it designed? What we can understand from an ecosystem and what are the structural and functional components of an ecosystem, and how energy flows in an ecosystem between the abiotic and the biotic components, whether there happens a cycling of nutrients. These are the features we are going to discuss in the lecture. When an energy flow has to happen, it has to happen through a food chain. So that is the sequence of eating and being eaten, and a series of food chains are connected and that forms the food web. Finally, we see how an ecosystem is being evolved, and that we say it as an ecological succession. Well, now going to ecology. This ecology is a Greek term coined by Ernest Haeckel in the year 1869. You can see his photo being placed in the slide. It is a Greek term spelled as oikology. Oikos means home, logos means study. So if you just look on to the definition given, it is the study of the organisms. So zoology, zoo means animals, logos means study of the animals. So here, let it be any organism, let it be any animal or a plant. That organism, how does it behave here in its home, in the sense in its natural environment? When it is in its natural environment, how it is interacting with the abiotic components, particularly air, water and soil. For example, you take in the case of a plant. A plant gets rooted in the soil. Through the roots, it takes the nutrients from the soil and it also takes the water from the soil. It transports through the shoot system. Finally, in the leaf, the process of photosynthesis happens. When the process of photosynthesis has to happen, it requires carbon dioxide, the green color pigment, chlorophyll, and sunlight. So, a plant is interacting with the surrounding to prepare its own food, or rather for its own sustenance. So, that is what an ecology defines. It is the study of organisms in their natural home interacting with their surroundings. When you just go on to the ecosystem, it was given by Sir Arthur George Tansley, who is a British botanist in the year 1935, defined the ecosystem. The ecosystem is actually a structural and functional unit of ecology. In the sense, whenever we say structural and functional unit, you have to understand one thing: cell. Cell is the structural and functional unit of a life. Similarly, a ecology, if it has to function, it has to be composed of various ecosystems. In the ecosystems, the biotic and the abiotic factors are entwined. They are interrelated. They are interacting with one another. So that is what we are trying to understand. Now, if you just look on to the typical definition or breaking up the definition into simpler statements to understand an ecosystem. First thing, when you just look on a region with a specific and a recognizable landscape. Region, it could be a simple forest. It could be a agricultural land, it could be a mountain, it could be a lake. So whatever it might be, it is a region with a specific lakes. Lakes means specifically you will find water, you will find fishes, and a recognizable landscape. Recognizable in the landscape in the sense you could literally visualize it. Oh, this is how a lake is being arranged. It extends from this distance to this distance. So it is very clear. Even in the case of mountains, you find a big hill. So it is a recognizable landscape. Next comes nature of the ecosystem is based on its geographical features. What do you mean by geographical features? Suppose if you just look onto a lake has got water and the depth of the water varies with the distance. At the bund, the depth of the water will be less, while in the middle of the lake, it will be lake or pond, the depth will be very high. So the geographical features also varies. Similarly, there may be a plain terrain or a undulating terrain where you can find mountains as well as the distribution of plants and animals with the nature of the ecosystem. Finally, the climatic conditions. The climatic conditions, particularly sunlight and temperature and rainfall. So, if you just look onto the sunlight and temperature in a desert or in a semi-arid region, the temperature is very high. So, the distribution of the plants are also very much limited. Otherwise, we will take a simple example of a coastal region. In a coastal region, sweating will be more because of humidity. In the case of a elevated region or a hill station, it is cool. So all these climatic conditions, rainfall, temperature, sunlight makes the abiotic components to be influencing the biotic components. So the biotic components means it is the living part of an ecosystem. So it is very clear an ecosystem is composed of abiotic and biotic components. Now, how we are classifying the ecosystem? Classification is very much necessary for our easy and understanding, and we can easily interpretation of the interaction between the biotic and abiotic components. The ecosystem could be classified basically into land and water. So it could be technically called as terrestrial ecosystem and aquatic ecosystem. The terrestrial ecosystem is further classified into three sub major categories, which we call it as a forest, grassland, desert. And in an aquatic ecosystem, which occupies two-thirds of the Earth's, what to say, the composition, we have seen in the hydrosphere, two-thirds of the Earth is composed of water. In that aquatic ecosystem, we classify into two types. One could be a freshwater and other could be a marine environment. The freshwater could be further classified into based on the movement of the water. If the water is stagnated, it could be not moving, stagnated rather. We can say it could be a lake or a pond. If the water is flowing freely, it could be a stream, it could be a river. So the water current is one of a major factor determining or making it to classify into what do we say that a stagnated or a freely flowing freshwater ecosystem. Next comes the marine ecosystem, which occupies two-thirds of the Earth's composition, hydrosphere we told. Marine ecosystem is again having lot of complex phenomenon, salt, movement of water, waves, oxygenation. So it has got n number of variety of functions. Finally, there is a merge between freshwater and a marine that we call it as an estuarine system. This estuarine system is a very important aspect we have to understand. Here, the organisms have to have lot of modifications. It has to withstand the heavy flow of current as well as it has to develop some sort of salinity tolerance. So that is how we make our classification of our ecosystem for an easy understanding. Now, till now, how we can better up our understandings on ecosystem? it is very clear there are a living community of plants and animals. They constitute the biotic. When we say community, just recall back. Cell. Cell organizes to form tissue. Tissue group to form organs. Organs distribute themselves and arrange to form organisms. The organisms team up or group together to form community. Very many communities join together, which we call it as population. So the living community of plants and animals in any area, it could be a forest, it could be a grassland, whatever it might be, it can interact with the non-living components of the environment. For example, you let us take an example of forest. In the forest, herbivores, particularly deers, are found. What do they eat? They eat grasses or herbs. How the grasses and herbs are distributed? They are distributed in a generally a red soil where they can quickly take up the nutrients, and the plants have got broad leaves or other thing. So for easy consumption and quick consumption, whatever it might be. So you find the leaf arrangement to be different, the animal distribution to be different. So they are interacting in all the possible ways among themselves as well as with that of the uh, abiotic environment. Second, ecosystems have been formed by evolution that has created species to live together. If you find very many species are living together, so over a period of time, they have formed a stable ecosystem where they could able to strike a balance with the within themselves and with that of the abiotic ecosystem. So this is an important point to be noted. The interaction is appearing to be balanced. Third thing, ecosystems have got both non-living and living components that are typical to an area with own special characteristics. When you say typical to an area, it means that they are found very specific to that area. Typical means, for example, camels. Camels are generally typical to deserts. They are called as sheep of the deserts. They have got long legs through which they can walk into the sinking sandy soil. And if you just look on to the plants or other thing, they have got their own modifications. Their leaves are reduced. They have got a scaly coating to reduce the transpiration, water loss. So their characteristics are special, specific, and typical to the environment for their survival. So this is again an understanding we are making from the ecosystem. Now, if you just look onto the ecosystem, it could be a natural ecosystem or it could be a man-made ecosystem. The natural ecosystem could be a forest, grassland, lake or ponds. It is all naturally formed. But over a period of time, when evolution started, man using its science and technology and instinctiveness, he started modifying a lot of the natural ecosystems. They are called as man-made ecosystems. Very particularly, you find agricultural lands, artificial dams, urban cities, which have been formed for a specific purpose. If you just look onto a forest area is initially cleared. Most of our civilization has started near a river. So even in India, you find Sindh Valley civilization, Indus Valley civilization. So man started utilizing the water to create agricultural lands, patch up the lands, clear the forest, grow some crops. Very particularly, he is eating some sort of cash crops, paddy, whatever it might be, rice, wheat, whatever it might be. So when he want to clear a forest ecosystem into a patch of thing, there may be an interaction between the birds or animals from the forest ecosystem to a man-made agricultural ecosystem. So you can find rats, you can find earthworms in the soil. Say for example, if you just go to an agricultural land, when a farmer is plowing with a tractor, you will find lot of white color egret birds. These birds will be pecking the worms or the insects in the soil. So there is an interaction even in an agricultural land. Artificial dams. So the dams are being stored, fishes are being locked in a specific environment. We can grow the fishes also. Finally, urban cities. So when we started urban cities, Very particularly, many birds and animals became commensal. They started interacting with the humans. So that way, the ecosystems are made into two types. One is natural, and the natural ecosystems are modified by humans. That we call it as man-made ecosystems. Now, next question comes: how we can analyze an ecosystem? How does an ecosystem look? Let us have a make an observation. You may be traveling in a road in a village or other thing. You will find an agricultural ecosystem or agricultural patch of land. How is it being arranged? It looks green. It is being surrounded by trees, and you will find a good shading, good coolness. So this is what an observation you find in an agricultural land. You just go to a hill station. Everywhere you find a thick canopy, in the sense there are tall trees, their branches are covered and forms good shade. The temperature is very low. So the ecosystem is a recognizable. What is its structure? Structure means how they are arranged. You find only small grasses, or you find tall trees. You find only specific group of birds. In your garden, a babbler might be coming, a sparrow might be coming, a crow might be coming. So how they are coming, how they are interacting, they are taking any food material, or they are specifically picking the grains. So how they are arranged. Next, how the characteristics look different. For example, a rose. A rose flower is so beautiful, but it has got thorn. The leaves, if you just look on, it has got a razor type arrangement of leaves. The same thing you can find with a neem tree. So if you just look onto a lotus flower leaf, so it is so broad. So how does it look? So the characteristics also vary from each individual, rather from each community. So what are the different types of organisms? Again, the same question we are asking. You find only worms. Do you find only birds? Or no birds found in that region? You find animals. What are the different types of animals? So how they are arranged? Do they come during the daytime, or they are seen only during the night time? For example, cockroach. Cockroach by and large it comes during the night. So it's a nocturnal. Owl. Owl is found during the night. So how does the ecosystem function or work? So when it has to work, it has to depend on very many components. So how does the interaction happens? When it has to interact, whether it is totally dependent, partially dependent, or interdependent, or self-dependent. So all these things, so there is an interaction. So definitely there should be a dependence. If a dependence is there, what is the magnitude? So these are the questions we are going to make with our ecosystem analysis in the further slides. Well, in continuation of our understanding over the ecosystem and the different type of analytical questions we have asked on the ecosystem, we ask a simple question: why we have to study the ecosystem? What is the need to study ecosystem? The first thing is they are frequently disturbed by many man-made activities, particularly deforestation. Clearing of forests has been done. I can say that the clearing of vegetation, as a result, the plants, animals, and the soil are completely removed from a particular area. Second thing, this including a disruption of the living components with the biotic components, or rather, the interaction is completely disturbed. This disrupts the species living in the ecosystem. For example, sparrows. Sparrows have been continuously into trouble. Their population is trying to rejuvenate because of the conversion of many of the forest as well as the agricultural land for industrial activities. So their habitat is fragmented. So they don't have a place to live. This is the biggest trouble. And some species are very much essential, and if they are eliminated, this causes a serious imbalance in the ecosystem called keystone species. If you want a banyan tree to naturally rejuvenate, you require a bird called hornbill. If hornbills are absent, or if hornbill population decreases, it indirectly influences the germination or the growth of the banyan tree. So this is again a biggest issue. The interaction, if it is disturbed, so the total balance of the ecosystem is disturbed. Finally, you find pollution. Not only through industrial discharge and other things, solid waste dumping, which has created many wetlands and lakes and ponds to shrink down and no more they are utilizable, or rather you cannot grow any fishes, or the fishes are often found dead. So all these factors disturb the ecosystem, and that is one of the main point driving us to study the ecosystem. Now discussing about the structure and functions of the ecosystem. When you just look onto the structural aspects of the ecosystem, it is being listed as inorganic aspects. For example, the basic nutrition for a plant to be sustained, major nutrients, we call it as NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus and potassium. In addition to that, we require finer nutrients called, we call it as micronutrients, molybdenum, zinc or the other thing. So these are the inorganic aspects, these are the elements required in the soil, required for a plant from the soil. Next comes the organic compounds. The organic compounds could be carbohydrates, lipids or fats. So these are being synthesized and kept in the form of a starch, in the form of a fruit, in the form of fructose in a plant. Finally, if you just look onto the climatic regimes, temperature, moisture, light, topography, soil arrangement, so all these things arrange the ecosystem in a proper way. Again, I am repeating the same example. If you just look onto your topography, the topography on a hill is undulating, it is mixed up, or on the flat forest or in the form of a grassland, it is perfect. Next comes here producers, plant, their arrangement, consumers, animals, that we can classify into herbivores, carnivores subsequently. Then finally somebody has to clear the dead, and that is being taken care by the decomposers, particularly bacteria and fungi. So if you just look onto the structure, it could be classified into two types. One is the abiotic components, which include the inorganic, organic and the climatic regimes, while the living component or the biotic component includes the producers, consumers and decomposers. Now when you just look onto the functional aspects of an ecosystem, the functional aspects are very clearly defined. It has got a small evolution, in the sense it evolutes into a successful ecosystem. When it has to evolve, it has to have different functions. First comes the energy cycle. How the energy from the sun is coming to the plant. It is using the solar energy. So it is using the solar energy to prepare its food called photosynthesis process. So energy is being transferred. And when energy has to get transferred or passed on, it has to go through a proper alignment, which we call food chain. So a fruit is prepared, or fruit is ready for consumption for a bird. So the fruit is already being prepared or produced by a plant because using of the sunlight and because of the photosynthesis process. Now the bird feeds on the fruit. So a chain is formed, and very many chains interlinked together to form a complex network of food chains, which we call it as food web. Then there is a diversity. When you say diversity, you find a variety of animals and a variability in their characteristics. They are interlinked between each other and also interdependent on each other. For example, hares or rabbits, they eat the grass. In the case of deer, they also eat the grass. They have got a beautiful linkage with the forest. Next comes the nutrient cycles, very particularly the biogeochemical cycles. Nitrogen. Nitrogen is a very important major component for the plant. So how nitrogen is fixed to the plant? So from the atmosphere. And it is also fixed by some group of bacteria called rhizobium in the leguminous, that is the pea plants, mutton plants. So once that nitrogen is fixed up, and that nitrogen has to be taken up by the animals and plants, they die, they decompose. So the nitrogenous compounds is broken down into simpler materials and it forms nitrous oxides, nitrates, nitrite. Nitrates are again recycled back, it again goes to the atmosphere. So it forms a cycle. So various biogeochemical cycles are associated where the elements get cycled back. So all these things evolute to form a proper and a particular ecosystem, which we will be looking on to the ecological succession. Now coming to the biotic components of an ecosystem. The biotic components are classified into producers, consumers and decomposers. When you just look on to the producers, they are autotrophs or chemoautotrophs. For example, autotrophs. Again, auto means self. They could be in a position to self-synthesize their own food through the process of photosynthesis. There are some there are some plants which can prepare their own food without the help of chlorophyll pigment, and they live in the deep sea and they are called as chemoautotrophs. They use the chemicals and prepare their own food. There is one bacteria called Bigiota that can prepare its own food. Next come consumers. As the term indicates, consumer means it will be dependent on the producer. It cannot synthesize its own food. It can only depend on the other for its energy requirements. The best simple classification is herbivores and carnivores. Herbivores, which feed on plants. The best example is a deer. Carnivores, which feed on herbivores for their energy requirement. Of course, we introduce a new category called omnivores, which can feed both on plants and animals, that we call as an omnivore. Of course, humans are the best example. Finally, when these animals die, somebody has to decompose it, convert the complex material into simple nutrients and give back to the soil, and it should be readily observable by the producers of the plants. Then only the cycle could be complete. The major decomposers are your bacteria and fungi. This is how the biotic components of an ecosystem are arranged. Now, when you just look onto your functions of an ecosystem, the first thing we see it as a food chain. Probably the picture is very clear. You find a prawn. The prawn is eaten by two fishes. It could be a perch fish or it could be a tar fish. Finally, it is eaten by a hawk. So the definition is very clear. The sequence of eating and being eaten is called food chain. So depending on the nutritional status, each organism is arranged at a trophic level. Trophic level means status. So the bird is arranged at the top. So it forms a complete hierarchical relationship. So the bird feeds on fish. So it is very clear the fish is arranged in the subsequent levels. So the producer or the simple consumer is a prawn. Prawn consumes small plankton or other thing. Even the fish also consumes. It again takes the larva of the prawn, and finally the larger predator is the bird, which feeds on the other carnivorous fishes. So here the sequence is being of eating and it is also being eaten. That is the first function of an ecosystem. Next comes food web. If you find the picture, you find variety of food chains. It is a network of food chain. So it is something like choosing a diet. You go to a hotel, you just look at the menu card. You ask for a particular type of food. If you don't have a particular type of food, you might go for your next choice to choose the next type of food. So the chances of eating an organism to be eaten and eating others are more. So you have a wide platter. Similarly, here a network of food chains where different types of organisms are connected at different trophic levels. For example, a deer not necessarily has to feed on only one type of grass. It can feed on any other types of grass. Another thing, if you find a carnivore, for example, a lion need not be necessarily feeding a deer. It might feed a hare or a rabbit or it might feed on a antelope, it might feed on a small gaur. So the food web is a network of food chain where different types of organisms are connected to ensure that the energy flows in an ecosystem. Now coming to the significance of food chain and food web. The first thing is, because of the food chain, you find a passage of nutrients. It means that because of the eating a material, you get a lot of nutrients. The nutrients could be macronutrients or micronutrients. So the passage of nutrients happens from one organism to another. As a result, when you take more amount of nutrients, the body gets built up and there is a good flow of energy to do our work. And it regulates the population size of different animals and maintain the ecological balance. In a forest, if deer population are only found, they will completely clear off the grasses. So there should be a predator population so that the deer population can be controlled. So it regulates the population size and strikes a good balance in the ecosystem. Then it relates the feeding relationship. It could be explained. You could illustrate. The deer has got a specific type of eating, and the deer has got a ruminant type. In the sense, not a ruminant, it has got a mammalian where it eats the green. So its intestine or other food items, whatever that eat, it has got a specific sort of digestive system. So the feeding relationship of nature could be understood. Finally, you find a variety of life that we call it as biodiversity. If you go to a forest, you find right from stepping a small herb to a large tree, and it colonizes in a different manner. And you find even in the crow, you find different types of crow. The common crow or a house crow or a jungle crow, which is completely dark, so dark black in color. So even that itself shows the variety and variability you find in the nature. So this is a very important aspect of the food chain. Now we will discuss about the problems associated with the food chains. In the event of passing of nutrients through the food chain, toxic substances also get transferred to the food chain. So from the bottom of the hierarchy to the next level, the toxicants also get transferred. And it is being explained to two terms. One is bioaccumulation, second is biomagnification. Well, bioaccumulation means it is the capacity of a living organisms to store the materials, particularly the toxic substances, through their diet. How we can understand it? We are eating a lot of food. When we eat food, the energy is also stored in our body along with the materials what we eat. They digested, they get absorbed in the blood, and the materials present in the food, the finer elements, get distributed all over the body and they get deposited or accumulated at a particular organ or at a tissue. So the best example is the toxic substances such as pesticide sprayed in vegetables eaten by humans. You can see lot of issues on Kasargod where endosulfan spraying is seen on the cashew plants. So in the event of consumption of the cashews which are being sprayed with the pesticides, as well as due to their occupational behavior, they accumulated the pesticides. And these pesticides generally get accumulated in the fatty tissues, very particularly in our adipose tissues. So these pesticides are generally persistent and they stay in the environment for a long time. So their residues are being felt and their products are also being highly hazardous, or rather I can say highly toxic in nature. So this is one of the commonest example being set for bioaccumulation. The waste materials, or rather we can say that the toxic substances which are being added along with your diet, it also gets added into the food chain. So when you just look onto the mechanism of entry, if you find in the photo a farmer is spraying pesticides and he is spraying pesticides for a tomato plant or any other thing. When there occurs a rain, whatever the pesticide residues get washed away from the soil and enter into the river. In the river, the water is mixed with the residue levels of pesticide and it is getting well dispersed with the plankton, which is again consumed by the fish. And in the fish, the pesticides or any other toxic substances, metals, get accumulated in the tissues, and it is either being consumed by the predators like a bird or humans. Very particularly, the pesticides like DDT is known to cause a serious impairment in the case of birds. It causes a nervous disturbance and also in the production of egg. Say for example, it produces egg with thin calcareous lining shell. As a result, during the incubation, the egg shell cracks and it leads to the mortality of the zygote or whatever the embryo it might be. So this is also felt in the case of humans, and the pesticides cause a lot of neural damage in the case of humans. Next issue is biomagnification. Biomagnification means it is an amplification of a contaminant. So it is the process of the toxic substances getting sequentially transferred. So from water it goes to plankton. From plankton it goes to fish. From fish it goes to bird. From fishes and bird it goes to human. So it is transferred from one trophic level to another in incrementing levels. When you say incrementing, it is an increasing levels, amplifying levels through the food chain. This has been well observed in the case of Kiladev National Park. So Ghana, which is located at Rajasthan, Bharatpur National Park people say, and this DDT accumulation is found in many birds. Very particularly, even it has been noticed in Sarus crane, which is a migratory bird. And not only that, very many species, it has been contaminated with endosulfan, DDT, where the population has gone to a crash. Even the levels have been detected in their eggs. So ultimately the population, the eggs did not hatch. So it has gone from a sequential level of spraying in the pesticides into an agricultural land, which came to a nearby lake or a pond. From there it got transferred to a fish, and over a period it got transferred to a bird in incrementing levels or amplifying levels. That process we call it as biomagnification. Probably you can see this. They have done sort of, they say it as a drip irrigation. It is so funny. You find a bottle of saline bottle containing the pesticides and it being given in the form of a drip to the local agricultural land, wrongly practiced by the farmers, and you find bajra seeds. So these have been eaten by many birds and the pesticide contamination has been picked up by the bird. That created a disturbance. It caused a neural disturbance as well as a behavioral disturbance, and finally the bird's population itself got crashed. Another interesting example which we speak about the toxicant transfer through food chain is vulture. In the photo you find a very big congregation of vulture. The vulture picture, what is shown is Indian white-backed vulture, which is a natural scavenger. You find any animal dead in the ecosystem, it goes and feeds and completely clears it. This case study was analyzed all over the globe, and particularly in India, it has been observed that this population started crashing, that is decreasing in the number. So their services are so interesting. When you put a dead animal, they completely eat, and look at the free labor rendered by the vultures. So you find the bones completely removed from the dead animal, and this bone could be used for preparation of orthophosphate. So a natural scavenging activity is seen. Today their population has been crashed or plummeted or decreased, we can say, and you find the carcass dumping yard in the outskirts of Ambala. See, whenever these buffaloes or animals, over a period of time after their milching activity is over, the dead animals are dumped. So naturally these scavengers, vultures come and completely clear these dead animals, and the bones are found. And the bones could be taken for orthophosphate preparation, as I told you earlier. Now if you just see, the dead animals are being left in the carcass dumping yard, you find only crows or dogs coming. There are no vultures to eat this. As a result, it creates lot of sanitation problem to the humans, the first aspect. you can have a close-up shot of it. You could find lot of maggots in the putrefying carcass, and it is not being consumed. And when these birds died, we took an examination of them, and when we examined it, we found lot of white color crystalline deposits in the kidney. And after our post-mortem examination and our scientific examination, we found that diclofenac, an anti-inflammatory drug largely used in veterinary to treat the mastitis condition, the udder becomes so big in the case of animals, to treat them it is being used. So ultimately they looked onto all the probable causes for this vulture mortality, and either it could be a pesticide poisoning, viral disease, or it could be a gout or physical extermination, and found it to be diclofenac. This diclofenac is being added from its diet of the dead animals, which is already been given that drug to treat the mastitis, and that has created a typical renal failure in the vulture, and over a period of time the whole population has been crashed. So this is the best example of bioaccumulation and biotransformation of contaminants through food chain. Now, how do the energy flow in an ecosystem? See, in a food chain, not only the nutrients pass through, the energy also passes through an ecosystem. The energy flow is unidirectional, and particularly the nutrients like carbon, nitrogen, phosphorus or oxygen are cycled, and their energy is not used very particularly in the case of abiotic components. Now, how does the energy flow happens in an ecosystem? The energy flow follows two laws of thermodynamics. Well, everybody should have studied laws of thermodynamics in physics. The first law of thermodynamics states that energy can be neither created nor destroyed, but could be transformed from one form to another. When you just look on to the first statement, here the energy is neither created nor destroyed. Sunlight is coming and plants are taking up the solar energy, and through photosynthesis generate starch, and the energy is stored in the form of fruits and flowers. So the solar energy is transformed from the solar form to a fruit form. Animals eat the fruits and leaves and take the same energy derived from the sun. So whatever the energy that is being taken from the fruit by the animal is actually a modified form of solar energy. So thus it follows the first law of thermodynamics. Energy can be neither created nor destroyed, but can be transformed from one form to another. Well, the second law of thermodynamics, what does it speak of? So energy can dissipate it as it gets used. It means that from a concentrated form of energy, it gets to a dispersed form. It means that energy is gradually getting utilized up as the energy flows from one trophic level to another. For example, the leaf. The leaf is the area where it captures the sunlight and it prepares its own food. Another thing, all the solar radiation that falls on the surface of the leaf is not used to prepare the starch. On the other hand, let us see, a deer is eating herbs or green. It is not completely eating the green or the thing. Some amount of material is being wasted in the process of grazing, and after being eaten also, through locomotion and respiration or very many other physiological activities, it loses its energy over a period of time, or rather it is not getting the complete 90% of the energy through its food. So there is a 10% of loss is noted. So it is very clear, from a concentrated form the energy gets converted into a dispersed form. That is what the energy flow of in an ecosystem happens. Now, how do an ecological system succeeds? How it is being formed? When you look onto the ecological succession, we say that it is an orderly process. Whenever you say orderly process, it should be systematic. Process of changes, even if the changes have to happen, it should be dependent on the previous change. So it is a sequential of changes in the community structure and function. So it means that an orderly changes in a sequential way, it is happening in a biotic system. With the time, so it happens over a time. So that is what we have seen as an evolution. With the time, mediated through modifications. So unless they modify and change, these changes cannot be reflected. And these modifications are generally made for their beneficiary activity or for their survival. In the physical environment and ultimately culminating means ending up in a stabilized ecosystem, which we call it as climax technically. So the ecological succession is an orderly process of changes in the biotic community with the time mediated in a sequential manner with the modifications for their survival and ultimately ending up in a stabilized form of ecosystem called climax. So the whole sequence of communities which are transitory, in the sense in an ecosystem, it forms from a small plankton, small floating plant. From the small floating plant, it could emerge out and it can send the root. It can get rooted. Over a period of time, it forms a small tree from a watery environment. So it undergoes a step-by-step change or a stage, which we call it as a serial stage. Second thing, the community which is establishing first of the time, we call it as a pioneering community. Generally, the pioneering community undergoes enormous amount of stress and makes a modification, and that community which could able to modify and survive could able to establish in a particular area. That community is called pioneer community. Now, the ecological succession or the formation of an ecosystem can happen in different status. If it happens from a watery area like a pond, it is called as hydrarch. You can see the picture. There is a water. Gradually, two plants are growing. They are rooted, and finally, it forms a colonization of the plants. And the plants which are able to survive finally stabilizes. And the ecological succession, if it happens from water, we call it as hydrarch. If it happens from a moistured area, we call it as mesarch. If it happens from a dry area, we call it as xerarch. If it is starting from a bare rock, it is lithocere. Sand means samocere. Saline soil means halocere. So the life has originated from different physical environment, and finally it has formed a stabilized ecosystem called climax. Now, how do the process happens? It happens through 5 steps. The first step we call it as nudation. Second is invasion. Third is competition and coaction. Fourth is reaction. And finally, we find stabilization. First thing, nudation. Let us consider an area to be completely barren. No life is formed. The question comes to our mind, how the area became barren. It can be due to topographic factors. It could be due to landslides, volcanic eruptions, or it could be due to climatic factors like drought or glaciers, or that area has been frozen, whatever it might be, or it could be due to biotic factors. It could be due to overgrazing, so that the land has become completely barren, desertified, or a disease could have been outbroken in the area, or because of the wrong agricultural practices and industrial activities. So all these biotic factors or climatic or topographical factors should have made an area initially barren. That process we call it as a nudation, where there is no life form. Next we will discuss upon invasion. Since it is a barren area, there might be some spores or pollens or grains should have been coming to that particular region. So it can happen through a bird or an insect or a wind or a water. So it can happen through the dispersal or migration to start an initial establishment. So initially some group of plants which has been dispersed through the spores or pollen grains establish themselves. That community we call it as pioneering community, or we call it as a pioneering species. So they are the first occupying life form in a barren area. Next comes the competition or coaction. So when there are more number of individual species colonizing, there will be a fight for the resources. So when the number of individuals increase, there occurs competition. So when there is a competition, there comes the concept of survival of the fittest. The competition could be for intra-specific, within the same species, within the individuals, for water, for food, or for space, or for nutrition, or for mate, whatever it might be. Or it might be a inter-specific competition between the different organisms. So they try to influence in all the best possible ways. They co-act together. They will be having a antagonistic relationship or a synergistic relationship, so that their community tries to get established in that particular zone. Now there comes something called reaction. They start using all the nutrients, water, and they occupy the space, and they have a strong influence over the environment. When they colonize themselves, they make lot of modifications themselves to better up to the environment or to cope up to the environmental changes. So this leads to lot of small communities called seral communities, which either they bifurcate, they separate together, or they join together. Ultimately, many of these communities successfully join together and live in a balance. They form a more or less stable community that we call it as climax. Very particularly, the climax ecosystem has got maximum number of plants and animals, and you find lot of symbiotic linkages. Symbiotic means helping, getting benefit from each other. A mutual relationship is being given. That relationship is used to effectively use the nutrients, land, space, water, all the other components, both intra and interspecifically, to maintain the energy. So let us see for an example hydroseal. This is seen in the case of a pond. So you find a lot of number of intermediate stages. For example, at the top you find plankton. The plankton gradually forms a floating over a period of time. The plankton gives rise to a support to the floating plants or other thing, and you find submerged, floating leaf, reed swamps, marsh meadows, and gradually you find a climax ecosystem, which might be a small forest ecosystem which should have taken its life from a nearby watery area. So the pioneering community are plankton and the floating algae. Over a period of time, they colonize together, they form to a stabilized community. And over a period of time, the plants die, add the organic material, add to the substratum, the nutrients are released into the water. Again, the cycling of nutrients happens. You find the reed swamp marshy stage, then sedge meadow of grasses, then you find woodlands. Ultimately, it forms shrubs and forms a stable ecosystem. Finally, you find a forest. So that is the climax of the stabilized ecosystem. Suppose if the same ecosystem originates from a bare rock. So the pioneering community could be lichens. So they send their roots, they give their exudates, break the rock, take the nutrients, they have got weak acids, they accumulate the organic matter. It helps to form the colonization of mosses, herbs, shrubs, and finally the forests. So here the process is slow in comparing to the water. There is a gradual building up of the organic matter, and it reacts, coexists, and finally forms a stable ecosystem. Well, summarizing till what we have understood, what is an ecosystem? So this ecosystem is given by Sir Arthur Tansley. He said that it is the structural and functional unit of a ecology which studies the nature of the organisms in its home, how it is interacting. Next we saw the structural aspects. When you look onto the structural aspects, abiotic components and biotic components are present, and you find an interaction. The functional aspects are quite related to in the form of a formation of an ecosystem, over a period of evolution, there is an energy cycle, energy flow, nutrient passage through food chain and food web. In the addition of nutrients through food chain and food web, we find the passage of the toxicants, very particularly the contaminants. That we have illustrated with an example. You find two toxicological terms, one is bioaccumulation and biomagnification, where the contaminants get gradually transferred from one trophic level to the another trophic level in increasing amounts. That we call it as biomagnification, while the accumulation of the toxic metals or pesticides in the particular tissue, preferably we took an example of adipose tissue, that we call it as a bioaccumulation. Now, when the food chain is there, you find an energy flow. The energy flow happens through two major laws. It follows two major laws. One is the first law of thermodynamics and second law of thermodynamics, which clearly states that energy can be neither created nor destroyed. It can be transformed from one form to another, which is said in the first law. The second law clearly states that the energy from a concentrated form goes through in a dispersed form. Finally, once the energy flow happens, the stabilization of the ecosystem happens, where the cycling of nutrients happens. So that we call it as biogeochemical cycles. The ecological succession undergoes in 5 phases. It could be nudation, it could be an establishment stage, or it could be a reaction. It can go with a competition and coaction. Finally, it forms a stabilization or a stabilized ecosystem. So the ecological succession process is very dynamic and depending upon the area from which it originates. For example, if it originates from a watery environment, we call it as hydroseed. If it happens from a bare rock, we call it as xeroseed. So at this junction, we have understood what is the component of an ecosystem, what is its structure and function, and what are the functional aspects and how it stabilizes to form an ecosystem. In addition to that, we have seen how an ecosystem is disturbed by very many factors.